at page 11, in the last paragraph there. The Marriott Resort, he speaks of a development at Ratomil. At Ratomil, Mr. Speaker. And the Back Sands project of Peter's Hope, which will add another 400 rooms. The Royal Mill Hotel at Ratomil, which will add 200 rooms. And the View and Myers Luxury Suites, a boutique business hotel, which had 50 plus rooms, and all of these rooms. And then there's the Buckerman Bay, which will add another 250 rooms. Mr. Speaker, there is another way, you know. Dominica is doing very well with hotel development. Through CBI, yes. St. Kitts has projects, and so is in Grenada. But this is where sometimes, Mr. Speaker, you have to, as a public figure, say, this may not be my preferred thing, but I have to look out for them people out there who are suffering, who are finding it hard. We want to get these projects off the ground. There's a way that we can do it without risking NIS money and without government adding another $130 million to the tax burden of these people of St. Vincent and Grenadines, because that's what will happen when you borrow $50 million from Taiwan to do it. Mr. Speaker, this is what is happening elsewhere in the region. I spoke about Grenada. 40% of the revenue went to pay down the debt. Now the debt is under control. The minister in his presentation spoke a lot about ECLAC. This is a document, this is a report from ECLAC. And the Economic Survey of Latin America and the Caribbean for 2019, the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, they say here, I'm trying to decide how far to read from. Okay, it says the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union generated its 8th consecutive year of positive outturn in economic activity in 2018. The Union quickened its recovery from the pervasive growth dampening impacts of Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017, with economic growth accelerating 3.7%, up from 1.8% the previous year. This positive performance is underpinned by an expansion in economic activity in the tourism, construction, manufacturing, and agricultural sectors, in which the ECCU economies posted positive growth. But I think the important part is this. Continuing robust performance of the tourism sector and construction industry, fueled by citizenship by investment programs, are expected to drive ECCU-wide GDP growth of 3.3% in 2019. They speak of Antigua and Barbuda and of Grenada, but they don't bother to mention St. Vincent and the Grenadines in terms of the growth figures. And the ECCU, it goes down the second paragraph. Economies continue to balance fiscal consolidation and debt reduction imperatives with the need to further stimulate economic activity. And here's the key, which is similar to Grenada. Strong inflows from CBI programs drove the current account surplus upwards, offsetting increased capital spending and improving overall fiscal position. In this regard, the aggregate fiscal balance shifted from a deficit position, that is the aggregate, you know, we are still in a deficit position, in 2017 to a surplus of $21.1 million of the Eastern Caribbean Eastern Caribbean dollars in 2018. In addition, the union's debt burden continued its downward trajectory. Ours is an upward trajectory. I pointed that out earlier in my presentation. It's a downward trajectory towards achieving the targeted debt to GDP ratio of 60% set by the Monetary Council of the ECCB. So, Mr. Speaker, here we have the impact of the CBI program. This is also from ECLAC, January 22nd, 2020, so it's right up to date. Dominica is the fastest growing economy in Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC. This is Caribbean Business Report, but they're citing ECLAC. That the new report of ECLAC found that the Commonwealth of Dominica is the fastest growing economy in the entire Latin America and the Caribbean. The island's gross domestic product is said to have jumped by 9%, attributed to citizenship by investment, soaring tourism numbers, and public sector construction. Foreign investors, they say people hawking and buying stuff on the corner, you know. Foreign investors sought to obtain second citizenship from Dominica through the CBI program, choosing either to make a minimum of 100,000 US contribution or to a government fund, or invest in a pre-approved real estate such as luxury resorts and boutique hotels. So, Mr. Speaker, I have, other documents, but of course, the dilemma that we have here is we have a poor government. They have, yeah, but I want to hang their hat where the hand can reach. There's a problem. This is the summary of the CBI programs. I wasn't going into CBIs much here, but it's important that people understand what we're talking about. Where you have on one side, the government side, they don't even bother to explore it as a possibility. Fear-mongering, you know. This is beneath us, as if poverty is not beneath us. St. Kitts in 2014 earned $767.9 million through citizenship and investment programs. They use that to fund small business loans, which is something that we are proposing to do in the New Democratic Party through the development of the National Development Bank, to upgrade education infrastructure, tourism development, investment in statutory corporations, building new roads and repairing existing ones. Here is a relevant topic here. Building new roads and repairing existing ones, upgrading sporting facilities, investment in cultural activities like Carnival. Now, the minister yesterday made a kind of it's in his budget presentation. He spoke about, I think it's on when he talks about agriculture, that some regional governments get involved in ephemeral schemes. Not him. Not here. What is ephemeral, Mr. Speaker, about a program? If somebody comes and you say you have a program and they invest in building a hotel, if the program stops, is that hotel going to vanish? Is it going to just simply go poof? Ask the Petro-Carib scheme. How much money came in this year? But the government happily got involved in that program, and they said we benefited from it. We now have $109 million still to repay on the Petro-Carib. And we still don't know how that money was spent, by the way. Because that is one of the things that we have no accountability for. That program was run illegally for basically all of the time that it existed. Because it was only in 2016 that a law was created to create a special fund. The monies that were collected was simply put in a bank account, and because they said there were reputable people who were on the board of the companies or whatever was in charge of it, that was sufficient in terms of the financial requirements of accountability and transparency. Jamaica had joined the Petro-Carib in 2005. That same year, they created a special fund under legislation to put that money in. We didn't, and we also did not put the money in the consolidated fund. So here is another illegality in the financial affairs of this country that was committed by this government. From 2005 until I think about 2016, when the Petro-Carib Special Fund legislation was passed in this Honorable House. And that's about the same time Petro-Carib money stopped flowing. So, you bolt in the door. Is it bolt? Is it? You close the door after the house is bolted. And so there has been no proper accounting, no involvement of the Director of Audit in auditing the books of Petro-Carib, because even in the legislation, the Director of Audit was made responsible for auditing Petro-Carib. They said the Director of Audit couldn't go backwards. She could only go forward. And what is she going to edit? Or is the office? What are they going to audit, not edit? So, Mr. Speaker, got off track a bit there, but the point of the matter is this. Nothing lasts forever. And if in the program you can have infrastructure development, if you could pay down your debt like you did in Grenada and get back on track, then you set up the conditions for other growth to take place. But the truth of the matter is there is no indications that this type of economic activity is declining or likely to go away. People carry on like if in the Caribbean we are the Mecca of CBI. We are small fry compared to some of the large destinations in Europe where similar programs are done. You know? So long as you have proper due diligence, when mistakes are made, you deal with them. You have reputable people running it. Even the IMF may approve such programs as it did in the way Grenada handled its funding. And it's transparent, Mr. Speaker. You don't just do it now where somebody makes an investment and you go on that sort of a discretionary basis to obtain or apply for citizenship because they have a house or a business of some sort that they can invest in. So that is where we are. So the government has that as an option, but we now sell passport. And meanwhile, you will not have the development in the way that you intended, and the hotel industry will continue to suffer. Mr. Speaker, I wish now to move on to deal a bit with agriculture and fisheries. The Honourable Roland Matthews will deal in greater detail when he speaks, but there's a particular aspect of it that I wish to address quickly. This is addressed at page 6, Mr. Speaker, of the budget address of the Honorable Minister. Yeah, that's the quotation from page 6, Mr. Speaker, where he says, again with a straight face, that other countries in the region are abandoning agriculture. That's quoting him. They are abandoning agriculture in a headlong pursuit of ephemeral and unsustainable schemes. SVG is sticking with agriculture. He said this in his last budget too, you know. He said, while other countries in the regions have drifted away from agriculture, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines government had chosen, and this is quoting him, to deepen emphasis on agriculture in Vincentian life and economy. So you see when I say old wine and old bottles? Today, Mr. Speaker, he speaks of his faith in the farmers and the fisher folk of this country, and of recognizing our custody, this is quoting him here, of the region's most fertile soil, at page 7 of the report. Not too long ago, you know, Mr. Speaker, there were members on the government side of the House who regarded and spoke of agriculture as if it was outmoded. It was a thing of the past. It had had its day. Young people don't want to go in the fields. Of course agriculture is important. We say so all the time, Mr. Speaker, that agriculture must be a pillar of our economy. It's important for food security, for employment, and for export earnings, if we can start exporting again. But where are we now? People have left their farms to grow elephant grass. Some have moved to the city to look for work, or to engage in vending. If you want to cut down on vending in Kingstown, the best way, safest way, is to find jobs for people to do. You think people like going sitting out there in the sun and can't make $1 on the day? I talk to them, Mr. Speaker. I walk in the streets all the time. So, Mr. Speaker, we no longer export bananas. They have given up on that industry. But St. Lucia still does. The regional trade in agricultural products is declining also, especially in Trinidad. Ask the boat owners who trade there, and ask the traffickers, the shippers. They will tell you that. It is my honest opinion, not partisan or biased in any way, that this government neglect of agriculture is a defining feature of this government. A case in point, you know the BAM projects that I spoke about last year? They're still not complete. And the Minister of Tourism, not tourism, the Minister of Agriculture ought to do something about it. The European Union gave St. Vincent and the Grenadines 34.7 million EC dollars to be spent over 5 years, commencing in 2013 budget. The government had to put in counterpart funding of $7 million for the banana company measures program to help with the diversification of the agricultural sector around bananas. Between 2013 and 2019, a total of $37.8 million was put in the estimates under those programs, that program, to be spent on the project. And the program involved greenhouses, livestock pens on selected farms, a food science lab.
Did you say $1 million or million euros? $1 million or $1 million euros?
Million.
Was it dollars or euros?
Dollars, EC dollars, 34.
I wasn't
yes.
second guessing you. I was just trying to get the number to write it down.
34.7. So, Mr. Speaker, it had the food science lab, and there's the Langley Park packing facility. There was supposed to be, I think, either 4 or 6 greenhouses. I'm aware that one at Montreal was completed. I've seen that myself. It was completed, but what has happened to it since it was completed? Is it under use? I hope the Minister of Agriculture will update us and tell us about it. Because if you're waiting for perfection, you know, farmers are losing hope every day. And to have it there completed and not used, that is a greater disservice to the farming community than to have it not completed at all. Because it's like putting bread on the table and tell people they can't eat it. You have somebody thirsty, and they put water there, but it's out of reach. That is what you're doing with them facilities if you don't make them available to the farmers immediately. The food science lab, Mr. Speaker, that was supposed to be done as well. I went to see it the other day. It's in the same state that it was. It has no roof, no windows, nothing. Last year, I raised this exact same matter, saying, because what happened, the funds were available for 5 years. They had to get an extension, I think twice, from the European Union to use the funds. Said Lucia has already committed all the funds it's got under the program. Because Belize and St. Lucia, I believe Jamaica were also part, they got monies under the program. But here, there seems to have been some bottleneck somewhere. So they started the projects. People were building pens on people's farms. They started doing the lab. I think Innotech, a company out of Barbados, was doing the lab out of Barbados. They've gone back so long and leaving the place there without a roof on it. Why? Are farmers so comfortable that you don't feel no urgency to try and get these things up and running? It's grant money. They said in the estimates last year, you know, at page 691, that the on-farm pens, the greenhouse facilities, the lab, and the Langley Parking facility would be completed. That's what was in the estimates for 2019. The exact same thing is in the estimates for 2020 at page 685. At page 685. And I'll read it, Mr. Speaker. It says here under item 451306, Agriculture Modernization and Development Program, $2.5 million in 2020. There's no expenditure budgeted for 2021, so the expectation is it will be completed. But that is the same thing it said last year. And so under the activities part of the column. It says, complete the construction of on-farm livestock, housing, greenhouse, park facilities, food science laboratory, and the procurement of equipment for the Langley Park packing facility. So we have, Mr. Speaker, a program here that we engage in. We told the people what is it we wanted. They gave us the money to build it. They say, go ahead, build it for God's sake, help the farmers of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And nothing. Mr. Speaker, I want the farmers of this country, those who have depends on their farm, I want them to call me, Mr. Speaker. Tell me how things going with them. Yeah, my number is 451-2845. 451-2845. Yeah, call me. 528-7272. Yeah. All right. So here is somebody who cares. You getting nervous? You getting worried? Here is somebody who cares, Mr. Speaker. I care what happens. I want to make sure that this matter is dealt with. And I'm going to be asking the minister questions about it and pushing it. Because it is it's a disgrace that you would have this available and you're just dragging your feet on it as if the farmers have everything at their disposal and it's not a matter of urgency for them. It's the same kind of stuff that happens with respect to Otley Hall. So, Mr. Speaker, having said that, when the minister says at page 9 of his address, when he says that the government's policy this is at page 9, the second to last paragraph, that the government's policy of diversifying around bananas continues to bear fruit. I think, Mr. Speaker, he just was intending to make a pun there. Because nothing really has been done. So the government continues to bear fruit with root crops, spices, fruits, vegetables, fish, livestock, eggs, and so on emerging from the strong component of the high-quality agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, much of what the minister is intending to take credit there for, what he's taking credit for, happened not because of government action, but in spite of government's inaction. Much of what has happened in the fisheries and the fish export sector came from the persistence of local entrepreneurs. I know because I know what happened in the Beckwith thing. That was a government project. Government made the facility available. You didn't make the market available. That was built under NDP so many years ago. Yes, you built it. And having created, Mr. Speaker, I said that I'm talking about the fisheries now. This happened in the case of the fisheries, I know in Beckwith, where you had local entrepreneurs who took it upon themselves to develop this market, and then with the market, everything flowed from there. And after a time, they were able to lease the facility from the government. But here is this. Having created the model through their hard work and personal contacts, what do they get as their reward? This government has given generous concessions to a foreign company, Rainforest Seafood Limited, to set up business in competition with these same local entrepreneurs. The local private sector exporters in Beckwith and in Oya. That is precisely what is happening. So when the minister says at page 9 of his address that agriculture is trending in the right direction in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I can't agree with him. You check the report, 2018 report of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, and you will see that it said agriculture declined. So if declining agricultural output is the right direction, if you intend to kill it, to kill agriculture, that's the only way that you would say that that is the right direction. So his goal that SVG, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, becoming the breadbasket of the Southern Caribbean, requires more than faith in the farmers. It requires constructive policies intended to benefit farmers. Well, then do it. $6 million they're putting in the estimates all the time, and they're floating this about. $1 million, say $6 million, farmers could borrow, farmers can do this. As if that's going to make a difference. So, Mr. Speaker, not sufficient. It makes a difference to the individuals, but it don't make a big enough difference. Even the problem, Mr. Speaker, pretty larceny, which he mentions at page 9. I said it makes a difference to a few farmers, yes, but not to the industry. I did say it, Mr. Speaker could tell you. Well, listen, you guys, you want to pass words and to find things to object to. But, Mr. Speaker, I've done the background work, I've done the research, I know what I'm talking about. That is the way I proceed. I really rather take my time and understand what's happening rather than go shoot my mouth off. Because I want to make a difference, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to just score points. I want to make a difference. That is my approach. And I think the people of this country understand that. And they trust me for it. Mr. Speaker, even the problem of predial larceny, the thieving of animals and your agricultural produce, which he mentions as a problem. And I've been talking about this on radio a lot over the past 6 or 8 months. It's something that we should have been talking about more because farmers complain about it. But even that has not been seriously dealt with by the government because we have tough legislation, tough legislation on the books, you know, to deal with predial larceny. But they have not followed up with it. The rural constables who were supposed to be the ones to implement or to help to implement the legislation have been ineffective because they were just job for the boys. They weren't really seriously intended to enforce the legislation. And so we have the situation getting out of control. Out of control. And the farmers are saying, listen, I'm not going to bother to put anything in the ground anywhere far from my home where I can't see what's going on. And then, of course, you have the marketing problem, which we touched on a little bit earlier on. Mr. Speaker, the minister also spoke about glowingly the situation with eggs. For one time, we don't have a shortage of eggs at Christmas. Very good. But what you had on the other side is that you had a glut in the market. So you have how we reach to the point of overproduction. You had the chickens. They had a lot of birds. They gave them out and people start part-time egg farming. And then all of a sudden now you have too many eggs. And people were selling eggs at below cost. So what happened? The government said they can buy the eggs and give them out to school children. But that's the same market. You get 6 eggs in school, you can go buy 6 eggs at the store. So it may help those families, fine. But it doesn't deal with the situation of the glut. So they say, well, now we have all these eggs. We're looking at trying to sell them on the export market. No? You're planning to do that? I mean, come on. You don't do any planning? Everything is a reaction? You don't plan in advance? You know, if you have so many farmers, so many people that are farming, doing egg farming, that they're going to produce so many eggs at a certain time, and so therefore you're going to have to do something about the marketing of it. Or you're waiting now for those people who got in as a part-time thing, like a retired police officer who says that he wants to go and pick up farming, egg farming, and so on. To finally say, boy, this thing ain't paid, let me drop out. Yeah? And then you're back to square one. When in fact you say you have the production capability, so long as they're competitive, then you can export. But you got to plan that. You can't just wait for it to happen, fall into your lap. If you really care about helping the farmers, or not just putting on a show, so that you're making chickens available to everybody. If you're not just putting on a show, then you would plan for the increase in production and you will do something constructive about it. That is how you run an economy. That's how you run a government. You don't wait until the thing falls on your head and you say, I'll put you on a hat. So, that's the situation they are with that, Mr. Speaker. And that is not the only case, you know. At page 7. At page 7, Mr. Speaker, of his of his budget address, the minister talks about the conditions being a global resurgence for arrowroot, that the demand for arrowroot seems to be up. All right? Let me find it. He said, our traditional excellence and experience. This is in paragraph in the middle of the page, starting with budget 2020. Go down 3 lines. It says, our traditional excellence and experience in the production of arrowroot dates to pre-colonial times. So we got history, we have pedigree. In recent times, arrowroot has enjoyed a resurgence as a gluten-free, grain-free vegetable with high fiber, protein, and folate content. But here's the kicker. This is our historical crop, you know. Unfortunately, our arrowroot production facilities lacked the requisite modernity, big words, they're out of date, and phytosanitary capacity. They're infected, to take full advantage of the crop's global resurgence. Again, no planning. So what are they going to do? Despite our history, world leaders in arrowroot, and now there are favorable conditions in the world market. We used to be the largest producer at one, not so? And we can't take advantage of it now. The minister didn't create the favorable global conditions. He can't take credit for that. The only thing that he could have been taking credit for is if our industry was in a position to take advantage of those favorable global conditions. And we quite clearly are not. And you know, this has been going on for some time. Because I remember hearing about shipment to the United States that they said was turned back because they were contaminated. That was years ago. And instead of lighting a candle, I remember at the time they were cursing the darkness. Who tell you that our route is not up to scratch? The market determines, man. That is who tells you. And so, nothing was done to deal with the problems in a timely way so that we could continue with the industry. A year ago, we went to the farmers up at Oya to have a consultation with the arrowroot farmers about the industry. We couldn't get a place to hold a meeting, Mr. Speaker. We had a school that was let for us to use to hold a meeting with the stakeholders in the industry, anybody who wanted to come. The day before we were to have the meeting, the school was cancelled. Couldn't have it. So we were going to have it in the Pentecostal church in Oya. I went to a funeral there once before. But again, they withdrew their permission. So we had it in a yard, under a tent, because we were determined that we would have that meeting. If people didn't want us to go to the people to find out, they'd have to do more than that to stop us. And what we are hearing here about the conditions is some of the things that the people reported at the time at that meeting. I want to make a difference, Mr. Speaker. That is why we go to the farmers. I want them to know my primary concern is not how I look, but how they eat. That is why I do this, Mr. Speaker. And that is why I try to understand the circumstances in which people live in this country. And we will make a difference. So, Mr. Speaker, essentially what the minister said there, that we were not in a position to take advantage of it, that is an admission of failure on the part of the government. That is an admission of failure. So now we have to react. There you go. And yet he wants us to believe, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure the Minister of Agriculture will come and talk glowingly about all the plans he has. It's an election year. After all. It's the results I'm talking about too. What am I talking about? I'm making up nonsense story? Yeah, well, you keep laughing. The farmers know what they feel. They want somebody to be their champion. They want people to stand up for them. They want people to take their interests at heart. You are not up to the task. So, Mr. Speaker, somebody's going to have to do it.